Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, to finalize our Julius Caesar story. Julius Caesar, part 3. Here we go. So, what do you think Caesar did as he stood on the north shore of the Rubicon River, looking over the city of Rome? What to do? It said he took an hour to think, resting his army on the north shore of the Rubicon River before he made up his mind, made up his decision. He crossed the Rubicon with his army. Caesar denies the request of the Senate to leave the army, disband the army, and come into Rome and abandon his post and come in without weapons and without arms. And he denies that request, marches his army right across the river, which is a sign of war. It is a sign of treason against Rome itself, because he has defied the Senate, defied the consuls, and is bringing the army back to Rome on his side. It is said that he has been quoted as saying, "Ilia act est," which means the die has been cast, which means he didn't care what they thought. They weren't going to give him a triumph. They weren't going to recognize him for all the things that he had done for Rome. So fine, he was going to march into Rome on his terms. This sets off a civil war between Julius Caesar and his supporters, the Populares, versus Pompey and his supporters, or the Optimates. Now, on Julius Caesar's side, you have the people of Rome, who are happy to help out in any way, shape, or form, and you have the majority of the military, because they think he is a fantastic general and will follow him anywhere. You also have General Mark Antony, who is an incredible supporter of Caesar, a best friend, very loyal, and very intelligent. Now, on Pompey's side, you have his supporters, mainly the Senate, lots of corrupt politicians, a small army, and you have Marcus Julius Brutus, a young politician who possibly might have been a relation to Caesar. Remember that name, Brutus. So, what happens in the Roman Civil War? Well, without a full army prepared for battle, Pompey is forced to flee Rome. He and his followers in a small group take off and leave Rome to go plan their revenge against Julius Caesar. So the city is officially Caesar's. He takes the city, he takes control, and without the Senate to stop him, without Pompey to stop him, he starts making changes. For the next 2 years, Caesar pursues Pompey and his army throughout the region, constantly battling. Now it's a civil war. Now it's not Rome against another territory. It's like Rome against Rome. It's like the American Civil War, where Americans were fighting Americans. Brother was fighting brother. Family members were against each other. Those reasons, the American Civil War, those reasons why they had issues with each other were very different, though, than these reasons. Caesar wasn't trying to promote or prevent slavery. Caesar was trying to promote the well-being of the military power in Rome, promote the well-being of its citizens, and protecting citizens' rights and giving them opportunities that the very rich Senate was not allowing. So Caesar was looking out for the people's best interest. Ooh. Now, the Roman Civil War continues, and finally at Pharsalus in Greece, Pompey surrounds and outnumbers Caesar's troops. The odds are said to be 3-1 against Caesar. Even though these odds were very grim and very unlikely, Caesar won this battle quite decisively and defeated Pompey and his followers once and for all, causing Pompey to flee for Egypt and abandon his post. He takes off and leaves, completely leaves Roman territory altogether, and he hopes that maybe he can convince another nation or another country to help him in his fight against Caesar. Unfortunately, the rest of Pompey's troops are left behind in Rome, and they are either taken in as prisoners or brought into the army, because most of them were happy to fight for Caesar rather than against him. Again, Caesar was a man of the people and a man of the military. He always looked out for his military soldiers. Now that Pompey took off to Egypt, during this time, Egypt was currently ruled by Ptolemy the Eighth, who was a 13-year-old brother of Cleopatra. You might have heard of that name. Cleopatra at the time was 18. Now, Ptolemy and Cleopatra's father, the pharaoh, died 3 years earlier. So Ptolemy was put in charge because women were not allowed to rule in Egypt, as were the customs of the time. But Ptolemy was also too young to rule by himself, being only 13. So, as the custom was, he was required to marry his sister because she was old enough to rule, and because Ptolemy was too young to have a suitor or have a girlfriend at the time. So until he was old enough to marry, he had to be married to his sister. Now, Cleopatra had no intention of letting Ptolemy rule at all. She was incredibly intelligent, was a fantastic leader. Unfortunately, she had fallen out of favor with her brother and her brother's friends and some of the other people who were in charge, which meant she was now living in exile when Pompey arrived, seeking allies against Rome. Ptolemy, on the other hand, he saw Pompey's arrival as an opportunity to win the favor of Rome. He had heard about how Pompey had fallen out of favor with Caesar, and he knew Caesar was an incredible leader, and he wanted to team up with Rome. He was quite an intelligent kid for being 13, at least somewhat intelligent, to know that Rome was a world power. And if he wanted Egypt to have a say in anything with that world power, he needed to team up with Rome. He didn't want to be conquered by Rome. How was he going to do that? Well, 2 days before Caesar tracks down Pompey in Egypt, Ptolemy has Pompey killed. Caesar arrives in Egypt and has a meeting with Ptolemy. And Ptolemy thinks this is wonderful. He thinks, oh my goodness, this is going to be great. This is going to be fantastic. Ptolemy welcomes Caesar and says, Caesar, I'm so glad you are here. And as a welcoming gift, I have something for you. And he sends out his men, and they walk back with a basket. And he places the basket down at Caesar's feet. And they open the basket, and it's Pompey's head. Classy. Caesar was not happy. Now, you'd think that maybe Caesar would be happy. Pompey is dead. Look, Ptolemy had him killed. This is great. One less enemy for Caesar. But remember, Pompey and Caesar have a history. Pompey married Caesar's only daughter. How many years back? Caesar had a lot of respect for Pompey, even though he was not a very nice guy to him currently. And Caesar had no intentions of killing Pompey. He was, probably would have had a really nice long talk. There probably would have been some sort of consequence, but Caesar was not one to just kill everyone. So this hurt him in so many ways. Caesar was furious. And, well, let's be honest, Pompey was still an ambassador to Rome and sort of a ruling member of the Roman Empire at the time that he was killed. So Caesar is furious. Ptolemy's plan backfires. So yeah, Pompey was Caesar's political enemy, but he was a consul of Rome, a widower of Caesar's only daughter. So Caesar's like, all right, that's how it's going to be. That's how it's going to be. He brings in his troops to Egypt and takes over. Says, all right, obviously you, Ptolemy, are not fit to rule right now. I'm just going to take over. That's what I'm going to do. He declares himself arbiter and claims all rulership for the entirety of the Egyptian empire. He claims that he is now in charge, and his Roman army is going to make sure that people listen to him. And the Roman army was a lot tougher than the Egyptian army at the time. So what are they going to do? He holds Ptolemy in sort of a house arrest, takes over their nice little palace, and starts making some changes. Now, eager to take advantage of Caesar's anger with her brother, Cleopatra hears about this and decides it's time for her to take matters into her own hands as well. So, Cleopatra has herself rolled up in a carpet and smuggled past Ptolemy's guards into the royal palace to see Caesar. She unrolls from the carpet, pops up and says, Caesar! I'm so excited to meet you. My name is Cleopatra and I'm amazing. And I just want you to know that what you did with my brother was fantastic. He was not very smart. He's not very intelligent. Let me tell you all the things that he does wrong as a leader, and let me tell you all the things that you, amazing Caesar, are doing so right in Rome. We are so lucky to have you here. And she flatters him incessantly. She ends up becoming his girlfriend, and 9 months later, they have a baby. Cleopatra in 47 BC gives birth to their son, and she names him Ptolemy Caesar, nicknamed Caesarion, which means Little Caesar. Cleo's brother Ptolemy is furious. Remember, because she's still like married to him right now, I guess. So, Caesar, well, now he's got a kid. He's thinking, okay, well, instead of taking over Egypt, which is what he wanted to do, I think I'll just decide, Cleopatra is the rightful ruler of Egypt. She's got a lot of great ideas. I'm just going to leave Egypt in her hands. I'm going to head back to Rome. Cleopatra's in charge. Ptolemy gets out of his house arrest, raises an army of 20,000 men, and temporarily traps Caesar in the city of Alexandria. A Greek ally helps break the siege, and a Greek ally to Caesar helps jump in and sort of allow Caesar an out. They win that battle. Caesar's victorious, the Battle of the Nile, and that battle ends up causing Ptolemy's ship to capsize, and he drowns. So the official ruling pharaoh at the time dies. Cleopatra is now left in charge by herself in Egypt. But again, remember, not okay. She still needs to be married because women cannot officially rule by themselves per Egyptian customs. So she marries her next youngest brother, Ptolemy the 14th. Yep. And he's also only 13. And they rule Egypt, protected by 3 full Roman legions. I remember a legion is 5,000 men. So Caesar leaves 15,000 men in Egypt, all at Cleopatra's disposal, so she can decide how to rule Egypt in her own mind. She eventually poisons her brother so that she can rule with Caesarion at her side, because her plan is for Caesarion to take over and be the new pharaoh. Meanwhile, Caesar returns home to Rome. On his way through Greece to get back to Rome, he crushes the king of Pontus, a small village, and he calls him a rather poor enemy. Anyone who should stand up against Rome now must be a worthwhile enemy to fight, and yeah, he wasn't. He was pretty much a poor enemy, waste of our time, because now Caesar has fought so many different people and so many different tribes and nations that, well, now it obviously takes a lot to impress him in a battle. Caesar returns home. Upon his return to Rome, he enters the gates of Rome proclaiming, Veni, veni, vici, which means I came, I saw, I conquered. Pretty impressive comments from Caesar. The Romans are so impressed, they have no other choice, but they name Caesar a dictator. Not for 6 months, mind you, for 10 years. Dictator for 10 years. Caesar makes Mark Antony his second in command, and instead of taking revenge on those that opposed him during the Civil War, he pardons them. He brings them all up into the forum, forgives them all, gives them a royal pardon, including Brutus, and lets them go on and live their lives. Maybe a mistake. Just foreshadowing. Maybe that was a mistake. But Caesar was a good man, letting them live. You know what? You're all my brothers. Let's let bygones be bygones. We didn't get along before, but I am a very forgiving man. I want you to live and enjoy Rome. Rome is meant to be for everyone. Why should I decide who lives or dies? I'm now in charge, and you may live. Go live your lives. All is forgiven. I gotta honor that and respect that, but bad idea, man. So, Caesar gets named dictator for life, not just for 10 years, but for life. What? Caesar returns home and is elected dictator for life. I'll say he's only elected dictator for 10 years because he's only dictator for 10 years. But they elect him dictator for life. Life is winding down for him. In his stint as dictator, he helps the poor get more jobs. He opens and expands Rome's territory. He increases soldiers' salaries. He holds festivals for people, offers up opportunities for free bread, free food, free water for those who are poor and can't afford it. He opens up the Roman baths for people who are poor. He helps the people of Rome become prosperous. He shares the wealth. He wants the poor to be looked after, and he wants those who are rich to either help out or just stay away. You can be rich, but just then don't make rules that only help rich people. Make rules that help everybody. Now, one of the coolest things he did, now he did a lot of incredible things, but one of his most significant reforms was the Roman calendar. He changed the calendar completely. It was originally 355 days. Using science and using lots of people who were smarter than him, he established a 365-day calendar, which, boom, we're still using today. 365 days. They knew this 2,000 years ago, guys. How cool is that? Yeah. This aligned the months with the seasons more precisely. The month of July is actually named after him. And I'm going to go through a couple of the months with you real quick. So, January, first month of the year, named after Janus, the god of beginnings, of starting things. February was actually named after the celebration of Februa, where people were cleansed, and it was kind of like a spring cleaning. Everything was cleaned: houses, people, pets, animals. All the trash got sent out. Things like spring cleaning we do now. They did that in February. They're cleaning everything and starting over. Uh, March, we talked about how it was named after the god Mars. April was actually originally Latin Aprilis, which means second. April was originally the second month on the calendar. May, named after Maya, the earth goddess. June, after Juno. July, Julius Caesar. This is why, if you're born in July, it's very cool because, named after Julius Caesar. Of course, that's awesome. August is actually going to be named after another fantastic Roman that we're going to learn about in a little bit. So I'm not going to share that yet. September, October, November, and December were all named after what month they were. September was originally the seventh month, sept meaning seven in Latin. October, oct meaning eight. November, was a prefix for 9, and December, DEC, was the Latin prefix for 10. So originally there were only 10 months, and Caesar changed things around. So although October isn't the 8th month, now it's like the 10th month, it was originally named for, being the 8th month. So calendar, we can thank the Romans for. Specifically, Julius Caesar. Woo-hoo! Oh yeah, he's that awesome. So, earlier we were talking about triumphs. Well, Julius Caesar never got his triumph, right? In April 46 BC, Caesar celebrated a quadruple triumph, which became famous for its extravagance. He spent over 65,000 talents, silver talents, which is about $65 million, on a giant parade. He gave bonuses to his soldiers, amassed huge mock battles in the Colosseum that included thousands of men and horses and elephants. Oh yeah. There were parades and celebrations and free food and Circus Maximus events and free baths for everybody at the bathhouses, and just a huge, giant celebration of amazingness. A quadruple triumph. He even filled up the Colosseum with water and held a naval battle that included over 4,000 men. The Colosseum, the gladiatorial Colosseum, filled it with water. Think about how you would fill that giant. Think about how you'd fill like any football stadium, and you'd fill it with water so deep that you could, sail ships in it, and then have 4,000 men fighting in it. Yeah, so cool. So, many of Caesar's reforms were not popular amongst the Senate and other patricians. Why? Because they weren't laws that helped benefit all of those who were already rich and in power. A lot of the laws helped benefit people who were struggling to find jobs, who were struggling to keep their businesses going, who were just struggling to live. The patricians were not the favored class under Caesar anymore. And the Senate wasn't given this, high and mighty status anymore, and that angered quite a few of them. Many still believed that Caesar was trying to become the imperator or an emperor. So dictator for life, ooh, I don't know. It sounds like an emperor. It sounds like you're in charge forever and ever, which kind of is, So a group of senators led by Brutus, remember that name? Held a secret meeting and devised a plot to assassinate him. A seer, someone who sees into the future, is said to have warned Caesar that harm will come to him before the Ides of March. March 15th is the Ides of March. Caesar, thinking, who's going to harm me? The people love me, completely ignores the warning. March 15th, once in the Senate chamber, many senators, I missed a part. On the Ides of March, March 15th, 44 BC, Caesar was called to the Senate chamber. As usual, he went with Mark Antony at his side. However, in a perfect plot, some senators intercepted and distracted Mark Antony and pulled him aside to meet with him about some very important business on their way into the Senate, and Caesar continued on. Once in the Senate chamber, the senators corralled around Caesar as if they were going to talk to him all at once and had pressing business, and they attacked. The senators grabbed Caesar and stabbed him with a bunch of knives, and after it was done, Caesar, died. It is said that more than 60 senators had participated in the violence. Very famous painting portraying the assassination of Caesar. No, they didn't all stab him with giant swords, but small knives that were hidden, daggers that were hidden in their togas. It was said that one didn't enter the Senate chamber with weapons, because to enter the Senate chamber with weapons was to be untrustworthy of your fellow men. So Caesar never walked into the Senate chamber in the forum with weapons, but he didn't have his guards, and he didn't have Mark Antony, and apparently all the other senators, not all of them, just 60, did not approve of Caesar anymore and wanted to end it. The famous words "et tu, Brute," came from Caesar. The line, "Even you, Brutus, even you, my own family, would do this to me." Heartbreaking. Many Roman citizens, especially in the lower class, were huge fans of Caesar, and they thought he was their hero, and they were incredibly grief-stricken. Many rioted. They set fire to the Senate House, threatened the senators, tried to revolt against them. Very angry that a few wealthy people would take it upon themselves to kill the one person who was standing up for the lower classes of Rome. Mark Antony delivered a eulogy at the funeral that solidified Caesar's popularity, and he would then also lead an army that hunted down and killed all those involved in the assassination, including Brutus. Then things get a little dicey. Caesar left a will naming Octavian Augustus, his nephew, who was only 19 years old at the time, the heir to his fortune and position as dictator. This enraged Mark Antony, who had been second in command for this whole time and very loyal to Caesar for many, many, many years. Why wasn't Mark Antony in charge? Well, Caesar had said many times that Mark Antony had an anger problem, and that he did not trust Mark Antony to rule without letting anger get the best of him. So he trusted Octavian to think logically when making decisions, and he wouldn't let anger rule his decision-making. This, unfortunately, started another civil war, where Antony would align himself with Cleopatra, his new girlfriend, and fight Octavian for power. But in the end, Octavian won the war. Antony and Cleopatra would commit suicide, and Octavian would name himself Rome's first emperor. that sums up an incredibly short version of an incredible man's life, Julius Caesar. There's so much more to tell you, but that is where we're going to end today. So, where does Octavian take Rome in its new era? Guess we're going to have to wait and find out.